Right. I believe we've had enough time for people to start joining, so we can get started with everything. Thank you all for joining us today. Hello, and welcome to this edition of Saudi Build Webinars. The topic for this edition is Smart Buildings, unpacking the latest advancements in new developments in line with the Saudi Build exhibition. We have a wonderful panel today who will be joining us in just a second. But first and foremost, I would like to thank them all for joining us today. And I'll give them all plenty of time to introduce themselves properly in just a few moments. But first, a few house rules, if you will, for guiding your interactions with the webinar platform for this afternoon. Firstly, my name is Mahyar Brahimi. I'm the conference director for the Saudi Build Conference and Exhibition, and I'll be your host for this afternoon. If at any point during the webinar you have any technical questions regarding the Zoom platform or have anything you'd like to ask about our other webinars, you can do so using the Q&A function, which should be in the bottom middle of your screen. Please bear in mind that all attendee microphones will be, please bear in mind that all attendee microphones and webcams will be disabled during the webinar, and you will only hear and see our panelists. So again, if you have any questions for us, you can use the Q&A function to put them forward. Now, I'm sure you'll also have some questions you'd like to ask directly to the panelists, and you can also use the Q&A function to do so. Just please do specify if it's to a single panelist, to multiple panelists, or to myself and my team. Finally, a small favor to ask, once the webinar is finished, we would ask you to just take about 30 seconds to answer the post-webinar survey. This goes a long way in helping us prepare for future editions and, of course, is much appreciated. Now, enough from me. Without further ado, I'll pass things along to Mr. Ewan Walters, who is our moderator for today. Ewan, the floor is yours.
Hi there. Thank you and welcome to all of you to this webinar today. As has just been stated, we've got a very good panel for you today, a truly international panel. We have Hassan from ASHRAE Falcon, who's based in Dubai, as am I. You have Chen from DP Architects, who is based in Singapore. And then we have Sama from Honeywell Connected Solutions, who's based in, he's in Riyadh today. Welcome to this seminar to all of the panelists and all of those who have registered and attended today's event. The purpose of the webinar is to run through the latest advancements for new developments. So we all know the important role of building buildings, new developments and retrofits in the energy efficiency sector. It's playing an increasing role in retrofitting existing buildings and new developments and getting the energy efficiency mix and the best available output from our energy efficiency in these buildings is providing a more important role globally. I think here in Dubai, we're seeing an increasing focus on making sure that the new buildings and the existing buildings are being using their energy as efficiently as possible. And that can take a number of means, be it from using some other clean energy technologies like solar paneling, some small-scale wind, some insulation, and there are a number of different varieties that the sector can take to help with new developments or retrofitting existing developments. The funding of these technology types is an interesting area, and we can maybe touch on how these initiatives are funded as part of this panel. But without further ado, I will ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we've got a number of questions that we in areas that we will then go through, and each of the panelists will give their thoughts on those areas. And then at the end, we'll close with about 15 minutes on questions from the audience that have been submitted through the portal, and Mia will take us through that at the end. So if I can hand over to start with to Hassan from ASHRAE Falcon and ask him to introduce himself and his organization, that would be great.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think some people probably tuning in from different parts of the world, so it could be good morning or good evening. My name is Hassan Yunus. I'm the co-founder and director at Griffin Consultants and also the ASHRAE Falcon chapter president. I've been in Dubai for almost 14 years working in building services, energy management, energy audits, indoor air quality. I'm also an expert in indoor air quality. I'm on the standard 62.1 with ASHRAE that is related to indoor air quality. I'm very happy to be joining the panelists today. I hope you enjoy this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you for that. If I can now ask Chan from DP Architects to introduce herself from Singapore, that would be great.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hui Min Chan from Singapore. I'm a board member of DP Architects, one of the largest architecture firms in Asia. We also have a presence in the Middle East. So personally, I'm trained as an architect, but I've had experience in multiple fields. I currently also drive the design intelligence unit within our firm, and we are responsible for design technology research and digital twin adoption. So I also look after the firm's initiatives in sustainable design with regards to technology.
Thank you. And then finally, if I can ask Sama from Honeywell to introduce himself and the organization, please.
Thank you, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. My name is Samar Yamak. I work for Honeywell. I've been in Saudi for more than 20 years and engaged in the Smart Cities project for more than 15 years. It's quite an interesting topic. And basically, I joined Honeywell to focus more on the HVAC system and the indoor air quality, because that's something which is one of the key pillars for the, let's say, importance of the construction industry. I hope you enjoyed the session today. It's going to be fun, and hope you'll come out of it benefiting from it. Thank you.
Hi there. Thank you to all of you for your introductions. If we now move on to the first area, the first topic of the three topics that we're going to cover, that would be great. So the first area I want us all to consider is what are the impacts of the last 6 months on this sector. So are there any shorter term impacts that what's happened with the COVID pandemic will have on the new developments for smart buildings? And are there some more medium to longer term changes that this last 6 months will have on the smart building sector globally and specifically in Saudi Arabia? So if I can please ask Hassan to maybe give us his thoughts initially on this, that would be great.
Is that a question for me?
Yes, if you'd start, Hassan, that'd be great. Then we'll go over to Chairman. Thank you.
So, I mean, yeah, COVID-19, I mentioned that before, that it changed everything that we do. So we do things differently now because of COVID-19. I think in the future and current designs, we are focusing more on indoor air quality and resilience and well-being of occupants. Now, the problem with that is, in general, when you want to improve indoor air quality, you're sacrificing with the energy. So you need to consume more energy because maybe you have better filters that require higher static pressure, and these fans need to push harder that air through those filters. And you probably would need more outdoor air, especially in our countries here where we're just discussing this now, it's hot and humid, so that requires more cooling as well. So we need to balance these two. Again, it's always well-being of occupants comes first, so we need to take these decisions with the least damage when it comes to energy efficiency. I see also in future probably building entrances will have thermal cameras, you know, to detect any potential, let's say, virus-carrying individuals. Indoor air quality sensors will be more deployed. We're seeing a lot of customers asking for portable filters and indoor air quality monitors. Really monitor maybe viruses, but we can monitor particles. So I see a lot of at the moment asking for that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really interesting, especially what you were saying on maybe the air quality and the cameras being incorporated to track any increase in temperature on people. So, Chan, can you please give us your thoughts on the topic?
Thank you, Hassan, for highlighting the recent focus on indoor air quality and well-being. What we've seen is even before COVID, there were buildings that were going on major digital integration and creation of digital twins. And now that there is, the pandemic has struck, these buildings, and two of the projects that I will highlight in greater detail, have been placed in very good position in terms of adaptability and being able to cope. So other than the indoor environments that are quite critical and obvious to everyone that we need to attack, certain things that we've been able to look at, that how do hospitals flex their spaces to create more isolation rooms? How do buildings, all their tenants leaving because they need less offices now, cope with turning their spaces into something else? How do hotels who don't have any more tourists rent their spaces and cater to a more local crowd? All of these require a certain level of future proofing and flexibility. And two buildings. So one building I'll talk to you about is the Farrer Park Hospital in Singapore. It's actually a hospital and a hotel completely integrated with each other. They actually share a lot of back of house operations, and some of the hotel rooms serve as hospital rooms, and some of the hospital functions, they share certain hospitality functions. And that integration, because they're all digitally integrated, it was ahead of its time in its amount of digital integration, has allowed it to flex and cope with the pandemic a little better. And I think that people are seeing this as positive examples, and people are going to do more and be willing to spend more on digital integration and digital twin. The second project I want to talk to you about is Paya Lebar Quarter. It's also a built project in which its entire commercial precinct was linked together with a robust digital twin that linked up every single one of its building services, so that you have situational awareness of practically every single piece of equipment on one platform. And so this situational awareness not only could deal with the routine, but during times of pandemic or emergencies where you had to change your security protocol at the switch of a button, they could really adapt much more quickly. So I think that these two examples are things that had already been in play before the pandemic, and now we are seeing this move being accelerated because of the need for flexibility and future proofing.
Thank you. That's very interesting, especially on that last project around the situational awareness and the real-time, live-time updates and change that you can implement in buildings. That is interesting. If I can now ask Samer from Honeywell to share his thoughts on what impact the pandemic has had on this sector, that would be great.
Yeah, so thank you, Awan, Hassan, and Chan for your comments. Now, no doubt the current pandemic has placed its toll on the business norms, and this has put further pressure on the construction industry to find more ways to attract and retain talents. I've read a study by Forbes saying that by 2022, the war on employee talent will be the main competition between companies. So the main question for the construction industry, will my property be healthy and safe for employees to return? So in my opinion, the long-term vision of the construction industry, it's still there in terms of capturing and attracting talents, but the short-term tactics have changed to incorporate healthier building, and this includes real-time feeds such as indoor air quality, improvement in oxygen flow in the building, and many more ideas. Employees, for example, they would like to feel safe. In some places, the minute they are inside the building and they want to get real-time view of the building. There was a recent study by PwC. It was done back in May this year. In employees in the United States, they've said that 51% of employees, they are afraid of coming back to office, and 56% they're demanding guarantees that the building are safe and secure. So several vendors have recognized the importance of keeping employees safe and launched AI-driven or artificially intelligence-driven initiative for healthy building. offering customized dashboards about simply the health of their building. So for example, you get real-time monitoring of the air quality, biocontaminations from other employees, social distancing, mask wearing, and other PPE protocols. The AI part of that solution, basically it monitors the real-time data and normalize all data into visual dashboard and indicators to make it easy for employees to view the data. For example, employee might want to access a conference room or a shared desk. He or she can load up a mobile app, inspect that area and see who has accessed that area before to make sure it is safe to use it or not. If a guest is found in a building and he has a COVID-19 inside that building, the artificial intelligence will run analysis to find out how many people were in close proximity of that infected person and can potentially be infected. So then alerts can be sent to all employees so that they can avoid social interaction with the potentially infected people. Now, will these trends stay there for a long time? I don't think the current trends will disappear. I think they will stay simply because the concept of healthy building and the initiative was planned in those solutions, albeit in a slightly smaller scale, perhaps not as condensed as COVID-19 has put them to be, but maybe the interest of the people slightly fade over time. However, I do believe that the idea of healthy building will remain, and the demand for indoor air quality improving HVAC system will continue to be there and will ripple across the long term. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's very useful to understand your concept on the impact that COVID has had on how we will work in this sector. If we can now move on to the second area that we want to focus on today. So we want to talk about technologies. What are the trending technologies in this sector? So leaving aside the shorter term impact that the last 6 months may have on our sector, what technologies are currently trending in smart buildings, and what specific examples that the panelists have come across on some of the projects that they are working on that are relevant to the market in Saudi Arabia. So maybe if I can ask Chan to start us off, and then we'll move on to Hassan. Thank you.
I would like to say that, in my opinion, that a lot of these existing technologies that are now currently sitting in silos are waiting to be put together. In fact, I think you will see a rise of more advanced digital twins, and not necessarily it's a digital twin that's just geometric, but a performative one. Because I'm saying this because we've now got IoT. The building has got eyes and ears. It's waiting to be put together. So it's waiting for our brain. So with a digital twin, you can now put in machine learning, predictive analytics, and slowly, as AI becomes more and more mature, the building will have a brain. So I think that this is an area that many people are chasing and many people are aware of, so that you could leverage all the advantages of various siloed bits of technology. And I think that we are really seeing this on the cusp of the uprise.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you. So the skill is to bring all of these together into this one central, as you call it, brain, to make sure that we get the most out of the building, and then ultimately the building can sort of operate on its own autonomously and manage the energy performance of the building. That's very interesting. Hassan, what are your thoughts around the new technologies trending?
Yeah, I think I agree with Chan on more advancing the digital twins. And I think the idea here is to have more sensors, understanding what the occupants need and want. At the same time, give them the least amount of energy to be able to, be comfortable, be okay, be satisfy what they need, basically. So you need first to understand what they want. By having these sensors, nowadays we're seeing technologies like cameras in a meeting room. They can identify where the people are sitting, where they're sitting, what's their temperature, they're comfortable or not comfortable, increase the airflow distribution and the way it's distributed to make sure that everyone is comfortable. We're seeing technologies like, being in a meeting room where Meeting notes are being taken automatically, translated and sent to everyone. You know, you have your phone, you can sit in a desk, automatically the light mood changes to your requirements without doing anything. It knows that it's you who's there, changes the thermostat temperatures to your liking. So all these things are available. However, they come at a cost. And I think what's going to happen if the trend continues, then we're going to see a decrease in cost in these things. I don't say that every building is going to have them. Probably really high-end offices will have all these gadgets. I mean, we've been working on a project where these things are involved and required, but it's one of a kind project that the client, you know, wants to showcase, wants to show off basically. But yes, all these IoT things connected and used. So you just don't put sensors and don't use that information. If you just put sensors, they're not calibrated, don't work the way you need them to work, it's just waste of money. It is a lot of work that needs to be done. Integration between all different elements, all the stakeholders from the client to the contractor needs to work together. It's very hard to accomplish, but once accomplished, I think it gives the best available buildings would need to have that.
That's great, and it's interesting. You're following on from the same theme, Susan, that Chan raised, which is this integration, getting all the different pieces into a central hub. It's an interesting point about cost, and I'll come back just before the Q&A maybe to look at cost and funding. Just before we ask Simon to contribute, I just want to reiterate to the audience that if they can ask their questions on the Q&A portal, that'd be very useful for us when we get to the end of the session and we pick up on the Q&A session for 15 minutes at the end. So Simon, what are your thoughts on the
Yeah, so it's interesting. I've noticed Chan speaking on the brain or on the interface side, and Hassan mentioned on the sensor side, on the down side. I'd like to be in the middle actually. A lot of technologies are certainly out there, such as 5G, IoT, etc. But to me, the most important technology, which I think had started to ripple, is the artificial intelligence. And generally speaking, AI found a way in a lot of industries. From pharma to retail malls to healthcare, logistics and supply chain support. Your Siri and Alexa companion are simple examples for AI for home use. So I've read an article actually that's saying that how human resources are now using AI to assist in order to constantly improve employee productivity. Also, banking industry are trying to use AI, try to assist in studying more the behavior of the consumers and how to come up with the better, let's say, customized solutions. Now, from a construction industry perspective, because that's the topic of the day, AI will definitely has an impact on that industry. My company, for instance, has a lot of AI-driven solution. One of the solutions called Forge Connect. It's a nice, simple box. You can place it into next to any BMS system, irrespective of the vendor, and it uses artificial intelligence to automatically learn all the protocols, all the data, all the assets, all the functions in just 24 hours and be up and running and give remote user, or let's say property owners or managers, a remote connection to the facilities anywhere you're on the world. You could be sitting in a coffee shop, you could be sitting on a boat in Malaysia, you could be anywhere in the world and remote connect to your system, be able to manage everything from using that box. This is useful thanks to artificial intelligence. Another solution which is called the predictive maintenance. I think Shan mentioned that quickly, the predictive maintenance, which I want to dwell more on it. Basically, imagine a software running in the background 24/7 and trying to study your entire portfolio of assets and predicting that the asset downtime will happen the next hours, next days, next weeks, and then give you an indication, hey, this is going to happen over the next period of time, so you need to intervene now. You'll have your building running at full capacity and with almost no reactive calls. Why? Because there will be no need for reactive intervention. You have a dashboard that tells you exactly what's going to happen and when and after what time. So you can plan your field intervention accordingly. Now, the same software can also study building data, it can study weather data, utility tariffs and occupancy, and calculate the optimum settings for the HVAC system, so you don't have to put it on manual control. I was just talking to a customer yesterday. He will tell me my entire portfolio is running on manual mode and I'm using a lot of electricity. I told him AI is there to study all your data and find the optimum settings by the hour, by the minute actually. One more solution uses AI is the normal command control center that we all know. I think also Chan touched base on it, which is how to have the same platform integrate all the services. But I'd like to add more of it. There's something called automatic incident management. Basically, the minute it detects a strange behavior or a pattern or an issue happening at one of the employees, and takes on a series of activities, as we call it, standard operating procedure, to execute it. For example, let's imagine you have an employee or a guest dropping a suspicious package somewhere in a building and then running away. That solution will automatically detect what's happening and then create a sequence of activities to trace that issue. For example, it can contact security, alert nearby people to avoid running to that person or be far from that package, find the database of that person, whether it has prior criminal records, block exit on that person, isolate area of package, etc. All these actions are part of AI, which will not have to be linked to the operator seeing this problem and waiting for him to take action, because sometimes in a panic mode, people may not react in a quick fashion. So the AI can play that role, can come up with a decision and execute function to make sure the buildings are safe and secure. I think that's just one case study, but there's plenty of definitely nice ideas that can pop as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think people are having difficulty hearing some of what I'm saying, so I'll try and pull the mic a bit closer. That's really interesting, Sam. I think it's about, platform, dashboard, and management of the information. That's the critical part to make this easy for the end users. And to, we have to justify why they should spend this cost on these products. And the easier, the better we can make the products for them to use, then it's more attractive for those to sell it then to their directors and shareholders. And the third and final topic I wanted to discuss was the Saudi Arabia Vision 2030 and the Giga projects, and specifically what part the smart buildings can play in the residential, commercial, and entertainment complexes being built as part of the Giga projects, and what the panelists think about that role of the Vision 2030 and the Giga projects, and how the smart buildings can play an integral part of that. So if I could start by asking Hassan what his views are, that would be great.
Yes, I think for Vision 2030, we're seeing major projects like the Diriyah Gate and Neom and many other cities that are being built. And I've seen a couple of RFPs for the infrastructure and for the master planning, and it is an integral part of the requirements. It has to be smart, the city has to be smart, energy efficient, in some cases net zero even, or not net zero carbon and net zero energy. So the ambition is there, the requirements are there. I think it's achievable. I think the budgets are there as well. The only thing that will be needed in the future is that once we build these perfect buildings, we need to have proper maintenance, which in our part of the world, we still face, and I think it's kind of universal. The maintenance part is, we don't have the right budget sometimes for the maintenance. So even if we put the best sensors out there, and we were discussing this today with a client where we're turning their district cooling plant into an unmanned machinery space, if you don't do proper checking on these sensors, that AI, or whatever you want to call it, that brain is going to be reading wrong information and coming up with decisions based on wrong information. So you need to have proper maintenance, proper checking on every sensor every now and then to make sure that these are being, they are still working properly. But yeah, definitely, I think Saudi Arabia is going to be leading the construction, at least in the Middle East, with these mega projects. And I've seen it in every RFP, smart buildings are required, and it's part of the agenda. And I think it's well achievable. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to comment? And then we'll go on to Salah.
Thank you, Iwan. So I would like to take a little bit of a step back in context to the 2030 vision, which is a very ambitious and grand plan. I think with every master plan, we have to contend with that there's a fundamental shift in behaviors now. So any discussion about technology, whether it's smart buildings, smart cities, digital twins, cannot be divorced from the context of the next norm. Yes, some of these things that we are experiencing now are temporary until a vaccine is found, but the permanent changes in patterns of consumption and the way that our digital life and our physical life so clearly can embed with each other. You have an option now to work from home, a viable option to work from home, to learn from home, people needing less office space than before. What is the function of office space? What is the function of shops? Is it all now about experiential shopping and less about the stock holding? What role does just-in-time logistics handling play in a kind of a shopping retail context? What kind of flexibility do people expect in their residential spaces? All of these will fundamentally shift and change how our communities are built together. And infrastructure, the idea of infrastructure going forward as if nothing has happened, will need to be questioned. And so with that in mind, I would like to propose that in this kind of world where people expect a much more integrated life, much more connected life, less commuting, and to be able to live a more livable society and more sustainable environment, our role of the smart buildings and technology must facilitate this highly connected, highly multifunctional, and highly experiential world. So in this role, the smart buildings as a platform is a host of choreographed experiences. So it's as much about the technology that you put into it, as well as the experiences that you are creating, as well as its management. So experience management is a field that will emerge and become more and more important. It's less of a science, it's less of technical, but more of an art and understanding how people behave. So we have to partner this together. The discussion of smart buildings and smart cities can no longer be divorced from the day-to-day experiences of the end user. Hassan has mentioned, and Salma has mentioned, dashboards that show transparency about a well-being, how a building can bring about well-being. And that is going to be very, very important towards a more sustainable future, especially when we're looking at 2030 vision in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's exactly what the Giga projects are trying to achieve. It's that whole experience of being part of the Giga projects and trying to embrace everything they can on smart buildings and doing it in an economical and environmental friendly way. Sam, what are your thoughts on the Giga projects and smart buildings?
Yeah, thank you. So these Giga projects are serving really a great purpose of repositioning Saudi Arabia to achieve its vision, which is diversifying the economy towards important sectors such as residential, tourism, hospitality, and entertainment. Now, those projects are, according on a quick search, they are planning to have 30 million visitors combined by 2030. So by 2030, there will be 30 million visitors. Now, obviously, the visitors are coming for the heritage in the case of the Diriyah project, or maybe for the natural reserves in the case of Red Sea and NEOM. But of course, they're expecting more than that. They're expecting smart city services, luxurious mobile services, what Shan and you again called as experience of the whole journey. Now, if you look at Saudi Vision 2030, there are several important key factors and key pillars, but I would like to reflect on one of the important pillars in the Saudi Vision 2030. It's called like this: spreading a culture of optimizing investment. That's a fantastic statement. So looking at smart cities, there are many definitions for smart cities, but to me, a smart city definition is one which is connected, safe, secure, and also has a vision to serve its constituent in a smart, productive way. So by connecting all the systems together, we can leverage the smooth operation, centralized access to all asset and system, and then open protocols, open standard become the norm for which cities ensure future expansion and interoperability of systems. Once we have all those systems speaking the same language, as Shan mentioned, the digital twinning, business application can be created to serve city users, and guests start enjoying experience such as IoT, artificial intelligence, robotics, 3D printing, 5G, etc. Now, let me come back to Saudi vision. It says optimizing investment. How can smart cities help in optimizing investment? Smart connected cities will optimize investment in many, many ways. Just by having one centralized command control surface, as opposed to multiple siloed platform, is an optimization of investment. Having scalable solution and future-proofing all system in optimization is an optimization of investment. Reusing one network for multiple users, for example, it could be 5G, could be NB-IoT, is again an optimization of investment. Offering, for example, users internet's mobile application for quick access of information, for dashboard self-reporting or manual work or emails, is an optimization of investment. So there's a lot of central activities in smart cities that can help achieve that culture of optimizing investment. Now we look at the other part of the story, which is the energy efficiency. Now, as we all know, this became an important factor in Saudi Arabia. It's part of the economy and to focus on saving energy. In fact, the KSA government has entrusted one company called Tarsheed to look after all the government entities and try to explore ways of energy efficiencies. I'm seeing public agencies asking for saving energy anywhere from the small lights, saving on the lights, to solar system, all the way have refurbishing the entire system and trying to eliminate or reduce any inefficiencies in the operations. So this is where efficiency or electricity consumption can occur. As discussed previously, the use of AI to create predictive maintenance, energy optimization are also energy saving solution, which will optimize the settings, optimize the operation, and make sure your energy bill is lower and lower average. So to me, smart cities are the future in the kingdom, and they will have the large smart cities combined with energy spend optimization will contribute indeed to the achievement of the Saudi Vision 2030.
Thank you, Sama. Before I hand over to Maya for the formal Q&A part of the webinar, I just wanted to ask you, the panelists, all their thoughts on funding. And if you were a finance director or shareholder looking at a retrofit or a new build, why would they consider the cost implications of bringing in some of the technologies and the platforms that we've just talked about? What are the advantages for them of making their buildings smart buildings? So I wondered if the panel had some thoughts on that, and maybe we can start by asking Hassan if you have any thoughts on that topic, and then to chat.
So I think your question was mainly on the costs and implication on whether it's a new build or a retrofit. Again, there are some things that you cannot really put a price tag on, like well-being of occupants. It's not really easy to put a number on. Smart buildings would not necessarily reduce energy consumption, but in general they do. And again, from a cost point of view, it is a costly solution to have all these sensors, to have the infrastructure that's required. For an existing building, it will be much harder to implement compared to a new build. With the new build, this is something that we all talk about smart and digital twins and IoT, but there's not one specific definition of what does that entail. So we were working with one of our clients on a central plan for district cooling, and we created like a document that defines what is an unmanned machinery space, what is required. Is it once a week visit by someone? Would that breach the unmanned machinery space concept? So we need to define these things. It's a little bit confusing at the moment of what is the exact definition of a smart building. But when it comes to cost, yes, depending on your definition, the cost will be different as well. But it is in general a costly, not just from a capital cost point of view, also from a maintenance point of view. And I tell you, whenever I've looked at a BMS, be it any of the major suppliers or manufacturers of BMS, you always find there are sensors that are not reading, giving the right reading. So you need to put a lot of cost in mind for the maintenance down the line. So it's a costly investment, and also it's costly from a maintenance point of view. But I see it as the only way to progress. The construction industry has been stagnant for a very long time. We keep on doing the same thing. We kept doing the same thing for years. It's time to move on to a more digital construction industry compared to the others. Other industries are way more advanced than we are. We keep on doing the same thing. We need to move to modular. We need to move to the all sensors, smart buildings. But we need to also define that and move towards a realistic target.
Hi, Chan. I don't know what your thoughts are on the topic.
It's cost. Actually, I would like to propose that the cost that you invest in technology to an aim, not just technology for technology's sake, forget about that. But if you're trying to reap a better outcome, sustainability, it will pay for itself. I'll give you one example. The Paya Lebar Quarter project that I talked to you about, in which the building, every single system was put on the digital twin. So the process of building the digital twin was made a part of the commissioning process. That means the subcontractors would use the platform to hand over and prove that the equipment was working and logged it according to the baseline that they were doing as part of the handover. As a result of this, just a normal way of commissioning a building, which was going to be paid for anyway, turned into a digital twin. So the cost of creating that digital twin was not necessarily entirely new cost. The outcomes of the having a building that now you can control the energy performance, understand at a precinct-wide, pooling the energy resources together, created for a much, much more sustainable outcome. I'm not saying that this particular building asks for green loans, but if you look at sustainability outcomes, regular sustainability outcomes is a requirement for qualifying for green loans, which are huge savings in interest rates. I mean, if you did a quick calculation, the amount of interest that you would save by having a green building will more than pay for whatever you're investing in creating a sustainable building and all the technology that goes into it. And then I would like to propose that right up front. And then well-being, that's just bonus.
And just the upside is the well-being. Sam, if you could give us your thoughts on why people should look at bringing and developing smart buildings, that would be great.
So I think Shan did a very good exercise in explaining how integration works. And I have two-sided answer to that question. The first one is aligning with Shan. Basically, the integration, the artificial intelligence, predicting the problems, optimizing system. I said there's tremendous savings there. For example, there was an article which I've read, just by having a building management system reduces your operation in investment by 20%. Just by having predictive maintenance, reduces your operation by 40%. So there's plenty of area of saving by trying to do the integration, by doing the cross-platform integration, cross-platform normalizing of data. There's plenty of ways. But I'd like to take a different twist on the topic as well. You know, instead of thinking constantly about the cost, you might as well consider, can we share that cost with somebody else? And I'd like to mention the idea of PPP, public-private partnership. The construction industry are trying to dig in, trying to find the right budget to invest and create all those projects. But there's plenty of people out there, investors, who will be excited to join the construction industry, to join the government in co-investing in those projects and making something which is fantastic. A simple example, I'm not sure if everybody know that the London Metro by itself, this was a PPP project. Imagine a bunch of investors riding on the wave of the government and their strong leadership into fulfilling a view. It could be the NEOM project, could be the Raya project, the Red Sea project. So instead of looking at the savings only, why not also ask other investors, other PPP partners? There's plenty of people out there. The problem is that this approach or this mentality is not done in an efficient way in Saudi Arabia. There's potential for improvement. I think the government should take a stronger stand on the public-private partnership, and there's a much better way to co-invest and co-create the vision of the future, so that everybody is part of that execution. Everybody is delivering the dream.
That's great. Thank you, Sam, for those final thoughts. Thank you to Chan and Sam as well. I'll now hand over to Maya, who's going to take further questions that have been asked through the Q&A portal and been asked by email. So thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Thank you so much, Ewan. Thanks to the entire panel for that very engaging discussion. Some very good points. I think we definitely have very, I don't want to say varying, but sort of the full spectrum of, I would say, perspectives on the panel. So that's always a great thing to have. One question that we've received a lot, I see that the attendees today have been a bit quiet, but thankfully we've accounted for this. So we have quite a few questions that we got over email. One of the key questions that we got a lot, and I want to put this to both Chan and Samer first, is on security. So you each touched on different aspects of sort of how technology can be implemented within smart buildings. Samer touched on remote control and whatnot, whereas Chan spoke about digital twins. So what I want to know is, obviously with anything that you give control sort of to a remote location or to a software-based system, you lose some of the security aspects. There's always potential for risk of breaches and hacks. What are your thoughts on this? If you can expand, how can you sort of ensure people who are a bit scared of the security side of smart buildings before they invest into it, especially for new developments? Chan, if you'd like to go first.
I think, I mean, I'm not an expert in cybersecurity, but the principles that I have, because I have my partners with me who advise me on this, the principles is to how do you say, partition where you need to partition and share only what you need to share. And I would like to propose that perhaps what we want is a common language so that you can transmit information in a just-in-time manner rather than a central database, and only have that processing done at the edge as much as possible. An example I would give you is a video analytics camera that we have deployed in a project of ours, and we're testing it out. It's interesting because that video analytics camera does all the edge processing in its edge computing. That means it doesn't record the video into the database and analyze it somewhere else, because that would be a security issue. You start to see people's faces. But they analyze the people counting, their behaviors, the social distancing norms at the edge computing itself, and send over only the data. I mean, they have practical reasons for it other than privacy reasons. It was because of it's much less data to send than send the whole video. But those are things that you would look at. Many more analysis of what you just need rather than just have a huge data dump. So that's one of the ways to look at it. And then also to partition your risks. But like I said, I'm not the expert on it. Yeah.
Samer, you want to jump in?
Yes. So the cybersecurity has always been, let's say, a pain for customers. And every time you tell a customer, would you be interested to have a remote connection? The first reaction is, what about cybersecurity? Our company has acknowledged that thing. A lot of vendors are doing a lot of activity, but in Honeywell, for example, we started a journey on cybersecurity. We're doing some kind of 5-stage approach for cybersecurity. So we're doing, first of all, an assessment of your current assets. Are your assets secure? Are your assets breachable? How can people breach? Now, the problem is that traditionally, the topic of cybersecurity is always linked to IT cybersecurity, but that's a mistake. Cyber attacks can happen on the IT side and on the operation technology side. So on the PMS, on the infected logic, on the cameras with default login password, there's plenty of ways where cyber attacks can happen. Just imagine that you have a USB, which when a highly secure place, and it can bring viruses coming in. So the first thing what we do cyber assessment. We see how many of your assets are unsecured and what needs to happen. The second stage is that let us come and we close all those locks, we close all those open gate, let's say, and then we make sure that your system are secure. Number 3, the more advanced one, we install some kind of software, next generation firewall, next generation antivirus, next generation SMS gateway, for example, SMS gateway to protect your ASBs. So there's plenty of applications that can be done to help on that perspective. Number 4, we do something called proactive monitoring of your assets, meaning that we have people standing there, some kind of SOC, monitoring all your assets, making sure that there's no attacks. And number 5, in case something bad happened, we will have some kind of intervention. People will go on the ground, try to close all the locks. So we understand and appreciate that cybersecurity is a painful topic. We acknowledge that, and we have a lot of ideas that we can tell the customer. We are just as happy for just as let's say concerned like you about cybersecurity, and we our social are cybersecurity just like it should be.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Samer. I think you really went into sort of all the different angles. One thing I would add to everything you said, maybe I did miss it, but I think in this region specifically as well, from my personal knowledge, the biggest risk is actually not your hardware or software. It's the labor, it's the workforce that are connected to these things, their knowledge of the security principles. And so social engineering is actually your biggest threat in a way, much more than your hardware and software. So I would also add that, you know, a labor training system is probably a very good place to go as well.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you.
Of course. So moving on to the second question, I want to put this to Hassan first. We got this from a rather small scale developer in Saudi. They didn't mention their name, so I don't want to mention it either. But it's a very interesting question that I think it brings a lot of different dynamics. I remember we've had a discussion on this in the past, Hassan, so I'd love to ask you first, but then of course the rest of the panel can jump in if they'd like. And it's a question of hardware versus software. So sort of the analogy they made is iPhone versus Samsung phones. The idea is, you know, do you take sort of okay-ish hardware and enhance them through advanced software that can get the most out of them? Or do you go into a scenario where you put as much hardware as you can and sort of have either a manual or sort of a less advanced software system managing things? So for new developers, when it's coming to smart buildings, but also energy efficient buildings, because that is a big key driver in this region, where do you think they should sort of focus their investments? Should it be more towards the hardware, more towards the software, maybe somewhere in the middle? What are your thoughts?
All right, so when you talk about hardware, I can maybe dissect that into many other things. So we can look at passive measures versus active measures. So in a building, I would really prefer to have much better envelope, put my money on the envelope to reduce my load. So why do I need a chiller to cool down the building? Because I have a load that's mainly coming from the weather. So I need to protect my building from weather by having a proper, let's say, insulation and wall orientation, and architects maybe need to reduce their window to wall ratios so that I can reduce the demand. Okay, so I would, yes, probably would need to put more into insulation rather than into a very sophisticated chiller. Again, it's always about the life cycle cost. So you need to do the life cycle cost to see what are the right decisions for that particular building. It would differ by utility costs. So if I'm building a building in Kuwait versus building in Dubai, the utility cost is much higher than Kuwait. So from a life cycle point of view, it's always a different opinion would happen depending on where you are. So if you're talking about Saudi, where the costs are almost similar to Dubai now, yes, it makes great sense to do life cycle costing and come up with the decisions based on that. Now, in terms of let's say hardware, when you talk about BMS or PLCs or SCADA, both need to be robust. And there's something that engineers do not sometimes understand is that the mechanical engineer is the one putting the algorithm. So I will put the algorithm, how things should go. The controls engineer or the communications engineer will need to program that into that platform. So from an algorithm point of view, it's a mechanical thing. We cannot add more money into it and change it. So it's mostly the algorithm that needs to be properly programmed within the solution. And they normally go hand in hand. You need to have better accuracy. So sensors that can read to a better accuracy will cost a little bit higher. You're putting a PLC versus a BMS, a DDC, it's much costlier, but it's more robust. And this is what we normally put in very critical areas. So for the chiller plants, let's say, we put very high-end equipment, whereas something that's not really gonna have a major effect, we can go for a lower cost. So we always need to look into it. And even when you ask about the security issues, so I have a small residential building. Do I put millions on the security firewall and put the security requirements in millions to protect my building? I need to assess what are the requirements, and then I put my risk. It's more of a risk assessment. Do I really need to go beyond, above and beyond, and put that amount of money just to protect? You know, somebody can come and close the damper on my pressure handling unit. So it all depends on that. If it's a nuclear power plant, definitely I'm going to put a lot into that compared to a residential building. So normally when we do security assessments, we look into that. So we tell the client, this is the risk. You know, everything can be hacked. Anything can be hacked. And similarly here, we need to look into life cycle costs and see what is the effect. If I go with a cheaper sensor in this area, what are the risks? What do I lose if that sensor is giving the wrong, signal?
So I would say you're sort of saying it really depends on the specific project and the specific needs and the specific money budget you have. There's no universal answer, right?
I mean, and also for me, the less sensors you put, but still get the same result, the better. So it doesn't mean that smart buildings need to have thousands of sensors. If I have 20, let's say, air handling units or fresh air handling units that are bringing outside air from the outside to the inside, I don't need to have 20 outdoor air sensors. I need to buy one really robust one and use that to communicate to all the air handling units. So we need to also be smart in designing. So put more money into the design rather than putting more money into the equipment. So the designer needs to know exactly what they're doing so they can provide the right solution to the customer.
Makes perfect sense. Ewan, Chan, and Samer, any of you want to jump in there, or can we move on to the next question? If you do, let me know.
Actually, I have a brief point to add to that. It's hardware, software, actually hardware. Actually, most people forget that digital transfer. A lot of people who adopt these technologies are doing this practically for the first time or the second time and so on. And it's more the transformation of mindsets. And you inferred also it's a kind of social engineering that needs to take place, because a lot of people who are new to this won't know how to evaluate the things that are being designed and proposed. And practically all of our projects that are to do with smart technology started as a proof of concept, because it's a smaller budget. You have much more appetite for failure. And so that you build champions within the companies to anchor and say, okay, it's not the number of sensors you put in, but what you do with them, and I'm going to own them, and they're useful to my workforce. I'm going to go to an incident-based management versus routine security. All of that change takes time. So we actually recommend this 5-step process. Before you go into diving deep, I'm going to invest in machine learning and predictive analytics. Try and figure out what your goals are, do a little POC, and then you step forward from there. I think hardware is quite important too.
Makes perfect sense. Samer, I see you nodding your head a lot there. Do you want to add in something as well?
Yeah, I mean, coming from, I'm a software computer engineer by design. I've been working in that area for the past 20 years. So I would like to lean a bit far from Haitham and go toward the software side. I think the software will be more dominant in the future. I've read a study recently, I think by Forbes as well. They said that data analytics and software were like number 8 or 9-ish just before COVID-19. And then with COVID-19, it became number 2 and 3. So the future is software, the future is automation, the future is trying to get most of your hardware from software. Now, granted, you need some kind of hardware to operate things, that's fine. But I'd like to say that software will be the main driver to get more and more services and more features in the future.
Perfect sense. We're running out of time, so Ewan, if you have any final thoughts as well to share, we can go there and then we can end things from there.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's been an extremely useful session. I think there have been some changes in impact on this smart building sector from the COVID pandemic, but overall, I think that the trends that we were seeing around creating a platform or a brain and to help a building manage itself and to automate that process, I think that is here to stay. I think how people use their buildings, as Chan said, is going to be very interesting around people's use of office space, people's experiences of, for example, shopping was used, and that may have an impact on how much new buildings are developed. But overall, I think smart buildings on existing buildings and new developments is here to stay, and it's definitely the way forward.
Perfect. Yeah, I couldn't have put it better myself. I think there's a lot of interesting projects coming up, not just in Saudi Arabia, of course, with things like NEOM, but internationally as well. There's a lot of exciting things coming up. We would have loved to touch a bit more on some of these new technologies that are coming up in the next 5 to 10 years, but there's always the next webinar. On that point, thank you all so very much for joining us. Hassan Yunus from Griffin Consultants, and of course, Ashray Falcon, always a pleasure having you with us. Ms. Chan Hu-Min from DP Architects in Singapore, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Singapore with the time difference as well. Pleasure having you with us. Mr. Samer Yamik from Honeywell Connected Enterprises as well, our software engineer extraordinaire. Thank you very much for your very, very valued perspective. And of course, last but certainly not least, Mr. Ewan Walters from Evershed Sutherland and Clean Energy Business Council. Thank you so much for being with us and for the great moderating. That's about it from us, from the Saudi Build team. Thank you all so much. As I said in the beginning, it would be much appreciated if you could just take a moment to answer the post-webinar survey. Without further ado, thank you for being with us. Hope to have you with us in the future, and have a great day.